Before I get to the story that I want to talk about, I do want to mention something that I wish I mentioned in the initial video that I didn't. So I'm going to bring it up now. The video, as you're going to see, is more of a AOC focused video. But I have to mention, even with all of Tulsi's weird moves, and I mean, over the past couple of years, you've seen her go from supporting Medicare for all to not supporting Medicare for all to pushing right-wing conspiracy theories, as I discussed in this video. But then you see moments like this, where Tulsi Gabbard and Thomas Massie introduce bipartisan resolution defending the free press and call for charges against Julian Assange to be dropped. This is great. And Tulsi Gabbard has been one of the rare voices in Congress discussing the need to protect whistleblowers. So I just want to mention this up front, as I wish I mentioned it in the video, but I didn't. So I'm mentioning it here. This is a fantastic move. That said, AOC calling out Tulsi Gabbard, as you're going to see, was also the correct thing to do. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called on Tulsi Gabbard to apologize to Ilhan Omar. Now, I'm going to get into what this is about, and I'm also going to show you why AOC is awesome. Why she hasn't just, that you can argue, as I will, that Tulsi has no real power. It's really easy to go after Tulsi, but AOC has called out powerful members of her party in the past as well. But I'll get to all that. First, I got to get to what the story is about. So I covered this a week ago. I think it was called, I have the title here, Tulsi promotes right-wing smear of Ilhan Omar. So that was the title of the video. You can go watch that to kind of get a larger primer on what the story is about. But basically, Breitbart News, as they reported here, Project Veritas, they say, has released the results of an investigation into alleged ballot harvesting by supporters of Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, a key swing state in the 2020 presidential election. So Breitbart News, a very far-right publication, Project Veritas, as I discussed in my previous video, has put up a number of bogus stories. And anyways, they're essentially a tool used by the right to try and attack the Democratic Party and the broader left. But as I discussed in that story, there is nothing to this. So all ballot harvesting is, as they call it, is ballot collection. So if you're elderly, if you're disabled, it's people coming to your home, collecting those ballots and submitting them for you. So in some states, only your close relatives can do that. In other states, any third party can go and do that. In this case, nothing illegal went on. Ballot harvesting, or ballot collection as it's called, is allowed, did go on, nothing wrong with it, nothing bad happened. But ultimately, what happened here, Tulsi Gabbard jumped on this story saying Project Veritas offers further evidence of the need to ban ballot harvesting. It's not a partisan issue. It's been abused to help both Republican and Democratic candidates, including in North Carolina and California. I discussed in that last video why this is not true. Please watch that video for a deeper dive on that. Please help by telling your congressional rep to pass our bipartisan bill, HR 8285, which also, as I discussed in that other video, this would do nothing to address what happened in, nothing illegal happened in California, and would do nothing to address what happened in North Carolina, where the GOP tried to steal a seat using illegal ballot collection. What they were doing was already illegal. And what this bill does would not have stopped what happened in North Carolina. But anyways, this is what came out of this. This breaking, Libin Osman. So this story from Fox 9. Libin Osman, subject of Project Veritas' alleged voter fraud story, tells Lyndon Fox 9 he was offered $10,000 by Omar Jamal to say he was collecting ballots for Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Omar Jamal was Project Veritas' insider in the Somali community. So Omar Jamal was the guy they were using to try and report on this illegal ballot harvesting happening in Minnesota. Of course, as I discussed, it was already known to be BS, but this just adds another layer on top of the BS, making it obvious how much bullshit was actually in this story. So this really isn't a breaking piece of news, as they say here, as it was already clear nothing wrong went on. But just to read a bit from this piece here, they say the lack of verifiable evidence, allegations of misrepresentation and entrapment, and coordination with conservative causes has been part of Project Veritas' method of operation. The Stanford Internet Observatory reports there is evidence that the voter fraud story was coordinated with the Republican Party, of course, and rushed to publication to distract from the New York Times blockbuster on President Trump's efforts to avoid paying federal income tax, which is hilarious because the story did not at all distract from Trump's income taxes. What has distracted from that is him getting COVID. But anyways, they say here, days before the publication of the report, James O'Keefe of Project Veritas met with Trump's Minnesota campaign chair, Mike Lindell, founder and CEO of MyPillow Inc., who tweeted out a tease that the report was forthcoming that night. A week later, the first Project Veritas video on alleged voter fraud in Minnesota had been viewed more than 1 million times on YouTube. The second report had been viewed more than 500,000 times. Now, this is where we get to the actual story. AOC here tweeting out, Tulsi Gabbard, you along with everyone else who amplified this fraudulent story owe Representative Omar a public apology. So AOC here calling out a fellow member of the Democratic Party, Democratic House, Tulsi Gabbard, to apologize to Ilhan Omar. And AOC is exactly right. Now, this is rare. For sure, it is not from AOC, but rare in general to see Democrats openly call on other Democrats in the caucus to either apologize or mention them by name at all is incredibly rare. So understand here that, to be fair, Tulsi Gabbard, she is leaving Congress this year. Likely not going to have much contact with AOC anymore. There's no need to. So somebody without any real power who's leaving Congress, it is really easy to call on that person to do what they should do here and apologize to Ilhan Omar. Not taking away from the action here, which does take a lot of guts. Most Democrats still wouldn't do that, regardless of the situation, regardless of Tulsi Gabbard leaving the caucus. Most Democrats would not call her out, but AOC here standing up for her friend Ilhan Omar and calling on Gabbard to apologize. Now, I was going to view this in a way where, because Tulsi Gabbard has no real power, I would like to see AOC do this more to people that have some actual power in the Democratic Party. But then I remember that AOC has done that a number of times as well. So she doesn't just relegate this kind of call to action for people that have no power in the party. No, in fact, in response to this, so Speaker Pelosi says AOC, Ilhan Omar, Aina Presley, and Rashida Tlaib have their public whatever and their Twitter world, but they didn't have any following. There were 4 people, and that's how many votes they got. So this was a story back in 2019 that I covered. And in response to these comments from Nancy Pelosi, AOC did respond publicly, saying that public whatever is called public sentiment, and wielding the power to shift it is how we actually achieve meaningful change in this country. That's one example of her calling out Nancy Pelosi. Also, at the very beginning of AOC's term, AOC joined environmental activists in protest at Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi's office. Ocasio-Cortez's decision to break with decorum and join the protesters could, paradoxically, open up space for her to support Pelosi on the House floor. So here you got her, AOC, standing up at the very beginning of her term to essentially call out the lack of environmental awareness or climate change policy within the Democratic Party at the time. And as they say here, it also, yes, it did allow her to, there wasn't really much of a choice when it came to the House leader in 2018. It was Pelosi or somebody more conservative than Pelosi. So ultimately it stayed Pelosi. But still, this is a lot more than others are willing to do. And if you're a Democrat who is willing to call out other Democrats, as AOC has also done with Joe Biden back during the primary, then that's worth acknowledging. It's worth giving credit where it's due. So AOC doing a great job here. Once again, holding those in her caucus to account. And this is also a small indication of what's going to come next year. If Joe Biden becomes president And you have the White House, Democratic, potentially the Senate, Democratic, the House, I imagine, staying with the Democrats. You were going to have a caucus here, a more progressive, an actual progressive caucus within the Democratic Party, fighting for issues like Medicare for all, like public or free public college, like a different approach to foreign policy, like a Green New Deal, various progressive issues, various left-wing issues that Bernie Sanders fought for in the primary. You're going to see Democrats fight for that and be willing to call out others who don't. And maybe, hopefully, also call out why many of those Democrats won't be supporting something like Medicare for all. Maybe because of the insurance money whoever that Democrat is receiving. So this shows you we're in for a fight, and I'm excited for that fight. For now, yes, the focus is, of course, Trump, getting out Trump, ending this era of insanity. And then next year, the fight really is going to be neoliberalism versus democratic socialism within the Democratic Party. And I'm excited for that.